what does influencer marketing mean? Specifically at Talkspace, how do you approach finding the right influencers, especially when you're promoting something that's sensitive or personal?
Yeah, so I think we have a pretty clear-cut brief around the types of value props and things that we want people to include when they're talking about Talkspace. I would say other than that, the core of our brand is that authenticity and the fact that there are millions of reasons around why someone might get therapy. And so we really do tell them that we want to hear their true, genuine story. I mean, one of the great things about therapy is that it's not 5 years ago. We're like past a lot of the stigma, and most people will talk about it openly, or they'll talk about something, openly that happened with a family member or a friend or whatnot. But most of these stories are very personal stories, and that's what we encourage.
Welcome to Growth Talks, where we dive into the world of growth and marketing with today's top leaders. I'm Tyler Elliston, founder and CEO of Right Side Up, and your guest host. Today, I'm joined by Katelyn Watson, CMO of Talkspace, the leading online therapy platform trusted by over 1 million users. A standout marketing executive with more than 20 years of experience, Katelyn has led growth for some of the most well-known consumer brands on the market. Before Talkspace, she served as CMO at Nurx, a telehealth service, and held senior marketing roles at MasterCard, Cabbage, and Shutterfly. She's also been a valuable thought partner to me personally since we first met 7 years ago this week. So Katelyn, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. I'd love to start by getting some of your thoughts on leadership. So before joining Talkspace, you stepped into your first CMO role at Nurx after initially serving as VP of Marketing. There, I know you led a major rebrand and helped expand the company's women's telehealth services. What were some of the key priorities during those first 90 days in the CMO role, and how did you lay the groundwork for that brand transformation?
Yeah, sure. First, I'll say that in my previous role at If Only, which actually became part of MasterCard Pricelicities, as VP of Marketing, I was reporting to the CEO. So I did have kind of a lot of practice in terms of coming into that future CMO role. But it was a really interesting time at Nurx because the company had post-product market fit. It was right as they were getting their Series C. And it was all about stepping on the gas in terms of marketing. And my background is performance marketing, growth marketing. So that was right up my alley. But I remember coming in and talking to the CEO, and he was like, well, we want this company to be the company for women's health. We want this to be the brand that people think about. Where do I go for my first point of care within the healthcare system as a woman? And I was like, well, really, all we're doing is birth control delivery. So we have a long way to go. But ultimately, after doing a lot of the research, I learned that for many women, the first time they even are going into the healthcare system is actually when they get birth control in their early to late teen years. And so I was like, okay, I can work with that insight. Also, we knew that along the way, we were going to be developing out many new products and services. So it was really about mapping out what those would be. And then I could start thinking about, okay, how do I build the brand for what we want to be in the future, not what we really are right now, and bringing that into our messaging from the standpoint of this is where you first learn about what's going on with your body. This is where you come to get advice from trusted providers for other areas of your sexual health. And then we were able to build it out from there. So it really came from just the insight and what do we want to be when we grow up.
That's great. Very practically, how did you do that? Were you interviewing customers? And if so, were those one-on-one conversations? Were you interviewing staff and just sort of executive CEO's vision of where they wanted to go? Like, how did you connect the dots between, okay, here's where we are today and here's where we need to go?
Yeah, it was interesting because it was really a total clean slate. So it was like, look at everything, change whatever you want. It was a very unique moment in one's career where you were kind of in the keys to the kingdom in that way. And so we talked a lot about, should we change the name? Because no one knew how to say Nurx. And so it was really about initially partnering with a really strong agency to help us go on that journey, which I ended up partnering with that same agency, fast forward 5 years, and doing the same exact thing at Talkspace. So it was like a playbook in the making, and I didn't even really know at the time. So a lot of what they did in their process was the stakeholder interviews. It was all the stakeholders internally, potential partners, potential health systems, people who worked in services where, again, we probably weren't going to go for 3 years, but we wanted to hear what they had to say. And then two of the other biggest areas were, one, of course, talking to customers, talking to women, understanding what their pain points were. And then two, talking to our providers. The providers are the other side of the equation. And we really found in talking to both of those audiences that people have this kind of white coat, I'm scared to go in and talk to my doctor about things phenomenon. Providers always felt like, well, sometimes people aren't listening, maybe our voices aren't heard. And we also want to figure out how to be like really approachable in this new platform. So we really brought all of that insight together. And then that's what ended up becoming the recommendation for what the future brand would be. We decided not to change the name, mainly because we already had such great product market fit, and Nurx was very ownable from an SEO perspective. That decision did end up working out for us. So
there were other brands in the space that did rebrand to great detriment.
That's right.
So you hired an agency, and presumably this was a brand design agency, right? And they were really co-quarterbacking that with you. Is that accurate?
It was. I would say that the biggest task that we put them up to was, we're going to do this once, and we need everything to be scalable and transferable and practical. So, a lot of times you see big branding agencies, they come in and they show you what the 50-foot tall billboard on the side of the skyscraper looks like. And you're like, okay, like it's beautiful if we were Nike, but it isn't necessarily practical for doing on Meta and like all the ads that we're doing. And so we really built that in and pushed them on that first and foremost is how does this, this feeling that we want to get, these brand assets that we're putting out there, how are they extendable across everything that we're doing? We learned a lot during that process, actually, which I took into the process of rebranding last year at Talkspace as well. And once we nailed the fonts, the colors, the photography, the look and feel, like all of the ownable aspects, we had them build out templates for us, literally across everything from landing pages, mobile responsive, to ads, to email marketing, to t-shirts, like really everything, which also, by the way, gets the people inside of the company very excited because they start seeing all of these real things come to life, because you really want the people inside the company to rally around the brand as well. And so it really came down to these brand templates, because oftentimes what you see if you have internal designers, because they're really the ones that are going to carry the torch, at least in my experience and the size of companies that I've been a part of, it's really been let the agency kind of kick it off, build the templates, and then everything else sort of goes back to the internal teams. But you want to make sure that you're not Frankensteining the brand along the way, that you're carrying out the vision, because you're also going to come across a lot of assets that you're like, oh, we didn't really think about that when we were rebranding for this type of campaign or event or whatever it might be. But to have enough of those extendable assets to bring those templates as you evolve as a brand.
That's great. I want to push a little bit deeper on the scope that the agency took on. So I hear you on design and implementation, more fundamental, like core value props and positioning, and like the who are we. How much of that, in your experience, has fallen on the agency versus you as a potentially incoming CMO that's just getting the lay of the land, versus CEO or founder, where it's intrinsic to who they are over the last however many years they've been doing that business?
I think the challenge being internal and even got up to speed very quickly is you only know what you're hearing in the four walls. And like, yes, you can look at your competitors. Yes, you can look at things in broader industries, but you just have those preconceived notions around the industry or what it is that you're trying to do. And that's really where the agency can rip all of that off, and they just don't have that. And like, you're the person internally who's hearing from the provider, like, oh, we can't use this word, or you're hearing from legal, or you're seeing the comments on your own ads as an example. So they are able to just in a good way be blind to all of those things. So after all the initial research, of course, the competitive research is brought in. The research around other adjacent and unrelated industries I found very helpful, because then you're starting to think about just people's general habits. How do they interact with other types of brands? What does their daily life look like? And then what are some of the messaging examples and things that you can actually own long-term in the space based on the Talkspace core competencies and your product and what you can actually do? And so they did a really good job of just bringing all of those things together in a succinct way, and then showing here's the brand platform and the brand values, and everything that you do should ultimately ladder up to this. And so for Talkspace, I'll just give you the example because it's more fresh for me. It was all about making sense of it and how you partner with Talkspace, you partner with your provider, and whatever your it is in life, right? It could be work, it could be a crisis that you're in, it could be you're just trying to be a better person. We can help you make sense of that. And then from there, it ladders down to, okay, how do you do that? What are the products that support that? And then how does the messaging and all the creative come to life with that as well? So it starts with that one big idea, which, by the way, there's a lot of training involved in a rebrand, especially like even internally, because the big idea isn't necessarily your tagline. People always often who don't really know marketing, they always thinking like, what's the tagline? Like, what is the 3-word thing? What is the thing we want to say? The big idea isn't necessarily your tagline. The big idea can break down into different taglines. And then from there, we really built it into a story that we tell internally, externally, across the templates, across the assets. And it becomes something that's also very consistent for the brand as well.
That's great. Speaking of storytelling and speaking of training, I would love to talk about AI for a moment. I'm sure we'll come back to it at a few points in this conversation. Just to tee up your thoughts provocatively, can't AI do this? Can't AI, rebrand and play that role? Maybe more practically and realistically, like what is your view on AI more generally and in application to this particular area? How would you advise companies to use it or not use it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, this was even the Talkspace rebrand at this point was really before people were thinking about AI in the way that we do now. And I've been kind of inundated, I have to say, with AI dinners, AI roundtables, AI talks. I could probably go to something almost every day of the week and get together with a group of CMOs who are talking about all things AI. And I've been going to some of them, and I would say the conversations have been evolving. And I've generally seen the sentiment around creative being there aren't a lot of creative tools yet that are completely set it and forget it. Will they get there? Probably. It also depends on the type of creative. If it's you just need to create a postcard for something really quickly and get it out of the door, maybe. A lot of the success around user-generated content and influencer marketing, which I know we'll probably talk about as well. I think AI is really good for maybe like mashups and creating different iterations, but not necessarily out of the box. So from like a rebrand perspective, prompts developed to give, put ideas out there. And I think this is where agencies probably are starting to see much better margins, maybe than they used to. It's just the ability to put all the prompts out there and let everything be creative, but you still need to have that. And we say the same thing, by the way, with AI therapy, because AI therapy is a huge topic right now at Talkspace. Human emotion, EQ, sentiment is still a big part of refining a lot of the output from AI, especially if it's an asset that you're creating that's like there for the long haul, because it has to be evaluated against so many custom variables and how you might use it. But I think it's a great jumping off point. Absolutely.
That's wonderful. I'm curious, just as a leader, and when you think about managing an internal team, how are you guiding your team? Are you pointing them to specific tools and use cases and saying, hey, you need to do this? Or are you saying, hey, bubble up anything that you're finding helpful to share? Or how do you fundamentally lead a team in this age where the adoption is so rapid, the technology is evolving so quickly?
Yeah, so I think for the team, it's about giving them opportunity. We've been pretty comfortable with content creation tools, funnel management tools, marketing optimization tools. It really started by figuring out who you're designated. For me, it was like, who's my designated partner on my team who's going to help me push this forward across the team? And essentially go to all the different areas, go to the growth team, go to the lifecycle team, go to the creative team and say, okay, how are you using it now? And by the way, a lot of people were using it and didn't even realize it because it's built into all of our growth marketing tools, into our even like subject line generators within Braze, right? Like a lot of that stuff was already there. So we really first packaged up, here are all the different ways we're using it. And then we stepped back and asked ourselves, okay, can we use these tools that we already have much more effectively and do more? And then, okay, where are areas where we could go faster or be more effective to add on? And then like, let's start looking for partners or tools from there. But we are very open-minded and we're looking at all of them and we're just trying to understand where the one trick tool lives versus the like full stack suite. So one example is Talkspace is a very hybrid business. We have an enterprise side of the business. We also have a B2B2C and a B2C side of the business that we have to integrate from a marketing perspective. And for our enterprise business, we were looking at, okay, how are all of our leads funneling in? Where are they going? How are we in an automated way prioritizing them after they come in through account-based marketing? Get them in, get them to the sales team, qualify them, the whole thing. And we had gone to a B2B marketing conference and we had seen some tools that looked pretty exciting, tested them out, implemented them very quickly. And we've been able to drive more leads through the journey than in 60 days than we were in a year. And that's like halfway implementing this tool. And so there are a lot of things out there that if you're open-minded to it, most of these companies are very willing to negotiate because they're trying to get the use cases out there as well. But yeah, once we sort of built that person in charge on the team and then had them work internally with the team, then we shared that with the company because we wanted the company to know, hey, marketing is on it, right? Like we are thinking AI first, and we also want to educate the rest of the company around things that are out there and how they might even apply to their side of the business. So we're bringing that as well.
Has the marketing team been receptive to that lieutenant, sort of the designated AI person? Like, do you get resistance to change, or is everybody like, great, you're bringing me this tool, you're suggesting this use case, let me go do it?
Fortunately, I have an amazing team. We put the right people in the right roles. And anytime you're building a marketing team, that is just a huge part of it. The right leader focusing on the right thing. And ultimately, the person that I chose for this on the growth side is on the e-commerce side. Essentially, everything sort of funnels to that person anyway from an organic growth perspective. So it made a lot of sense. I also think what's exciting about it is that I could have hired a person to come in and said, okay, you're going to be my AI person, like figure everything out. This is a unique moment in time for marketing teams where it gives people who are in these leadership roles an opportunity to step up and just like take it on, learn it all. So then when you are ready to hire additional resources, or maybe not, maybe you're able to move around resources based on the efficiencies that AI gives you. So I think if you're a marketing leader, that's a really good place to start, is like give your team the chance first.
Totally. I've talked with a lot of leaders about AI and how they approach this. And typically the responses fall into one of three buckets. One is, sure, figure it out. It's just encouragement. Then there's another where it's like the designated internal consultant / implementer. And then the third is like everybody has to do it. Like everybody is autonomous. And I think at Right Side Up, we've tried all three at different times, but have kind of now we're kind of on the far end of the spectrum where it's like, okay, some of us are scared to like jump off the high dive, but like it's time to get pushed. Like we've got to do this.
Yeah. And just try things, play with them. But you do have to have, I think, a designated leader. Otherwise, it's kind of all over the place and not well structured.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly all using the same tool. Like you don't want everybody to have different accounts. You want company accounts and you want information sharing. So when there's a use case that's amazing, it's got to get propagated throughout the organization.
Yeah. And the challenge with the consulting coming in is all of this is new, right? They're learning, like they're learning it as they go as well. And so if you just don't have the resources or that person to designate internally, I guess that would be an okay option. But I would challenge people to try to find it internally. Or if you're a marketing leader, do it yourself. Challenge yourself to be that person and make sure that every single person on your team is thinking about this on any new initiative that they're doing of how can I do it better with AI?
Totally. I imagine the success rate goes way down if you bring in somebody external that knows AI really well, but doesn't know the business really well. I would imagine that would be less successful than somebody internal that is figuring out AI, but knows the business really well.
Yeah. And it also depends on, a lot of the talk is about the marketing, the tools. How do we just become better marketers through AI? On the Talkspace side, on therapy in particular, there's also the whole world of the SEO side, right? The answer engine optimization, like that's a whole additional world that I think would probably live on the organic search team, but that's its own thing. Then there is, if your company has AI capabilities, which if your internal product teams and as a company as a whole, you're not thinking about that, you probably should be. With Talkspace, of course, we have AI capabilities that support our therapists. We have AI capabilities that help people have more efficient in between time in between their therapy sessions. And a lot of those things we've created, but we haven't really marketed them yet because marketers are still learning how do we market AI products. And so that's a whole additional tier for us to understand what is the consumer sentiment in being a customer of companies that actually have AI products. Because there's a whole, especially in online therapy, but really anywhere, right? There's a whole host of privacy concerns. Is it as good of quality? And so that is a whole new world as well, is just how do we market AI products to people? How do we figure out how, for people who are looking for AI products in your category, to find you? And then there's the whole host of like tools and just being AI savvy. So it's a lot right now.
It is. It is a lot. It's totally okay if not, but any shout outs to companies, either the AI company that you mentioned that's led to a lot more throughput for you all, or the agency, the creative agency. Any names you'd be willing to share for people listening that are looking for these particular solutions?
Yeah, so we've been pretty public. There's some case studies out there from Kodo. I think just did the Amazon rebrand, which was more of a how do you bring all these disparate Amazon logos together under one roof. It was a very cool project. They also were responsible for Airbnb's rebrands back in the day, actually right before I came to Nurx. They're just an incredible team to work with. And a lot of what I love about them is they get in the trenches with you when you're like, I need you to get people excited about this project that really don't necessarily understand what a rebrand can do for a company in terms of bringing in that growth aspect. So they've just been great partners. On the other side, I will just say, like, if you look around for AI SDRs, then you'd probably find some options.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for that tip. I want to pivot. So earlier in this conversation, you talked about coming up as a performance marketer. And certainly when you and I first chatted, like that's what we were talking about, performance marketing, specifically around like paid acquisition and growth. I want to talk about customer acquisition, but not through paid advertisement, rather through strategic partnerships. That's one of the things that's really stuck out about the stops that you've had. You've had strategic partnerships play a really integral role in your growth strategy at multiple companies. I would love to just dig into that. And I guess to start, are there patterns that you've noticed of companies where strategic partnerships can be a big lever? And when that is the case, how do you go about finding and establishing such partnerships?
First, I have to say, it's so funny to talk about brands so much, given that I grew up in performance, but it just kind of happened along the way. And I've really just learned how they both fuel each other. On the partnership side, so I spent a number of years at Shutterfly, actually, it was post-IPO, but the earlier days. And I believe that Shutterfly still, to this day, is one of the best in the business as it relates to building strategic but performance partnerships. And so that's really where I learned and where I grew up in that performance partnerships world. And being a performance marketer since day one, I had always been ingrained in affiliate programs. And ultimately, these are just glorified turnkey strategic affiliate programs. And Shutterfly was great at it. Why? Because Shutterfly had a capability to create and put out very, very strong, robust offers to strategic partners that really gave that two-way value. So if you're a Hawaiian Airlines, I'm using that as an example, which I back in the day at least was a partner of Shutterfly. You want to give your, people who are flying on your planes, you want to give them something cool, something extra, something added value, which is hard for an airline to do. But if you can hand them a coupon for a free photo book, like you're going to get the credit as the airline for that surprise and delight. But then, of course, the business goes back to Shutterfly. And then, of course, there's a strategic tie on the photography side. And they just did that over and over and over, and they kept reinventing it. And so fast forward, like going to Cabbage, going to If Only, going to Nurx, that was always an area that I saw as underdeveloped in most companies. And so generally would start with the affiliate program. It's like scalable, it's turnkey. There's probably some strategic partners in there. How do we pull them out? Or how do we go find other companies that we've wanted to partner with and come up with a performance angle for them? So that's been a big part of it. Even at Talkspace, we really didn't have a structured partner program up until recently. And some of it happened organically. So our first partner was with Aura. I've got my ring here. So Aura was developing a way to actually export all of your Aura sleep results and all of that to be able to share externally. And so in our case, it was how do you share it with your Talkspace therapist so you can have a more productive conversation about what might be affecting your sleep or your stress or your anxiety. And because of that simple product play, the fact that Aura was trying to focus more on healthcare. We're a healthcare company. We were really trying to get the word out to just a broader audience, and they have been really good at that. They're a sexy brand, if you will. The value prop on both sides came together really well. So we had success with that, and then we really just started building it up. I think one of the biggest challenges with partnerships when you're trying to develop it within a company is the ownership. How do you figure out who owns what in a world where at least most companies, similar to Nurx, similar to Talkspace, you don't necessarily have like a BD team sitting there where this is like all they're doing is partnerships. Shutterfly did. So Shutterfly did. They had a very successful business development team with the turnkey approach. And this is how they were able to like keep that pipeline filled and keep the pipeline going. The challenge is when you're starting it from scratch is, yes, you have the BD component, but you also have the marketing support and that piece of it. Most partnerships are not created equal. So some of them are like a distribution partnership, like what we have with Amazon. Some of them are more of a marketing partnership, like what we did with Aura. Some of them might be more of a strategic partnership, right? You want to partner with this company because it could help with other long-term strategic things in the company, but not necessarily short-term revenue. And what I find is that for the most part, marketing is not going to own all of those. BD is not going to own all of those. So you have to just figure out, especially if you build kind of like the Shutterfly style of turnkey marketing program, then you can start to say, okay, what type of partner is this? Is this a turnkey distribution platform or marketing? Okay, this goes to marketing. Does this fit in that long-term strategic bucket? Okay, it fits over here. So defining that ownership piece can be really challenging, but you have to do that up front.
I'm curious, at your stops, what percentage would you estimate of the successful partnerships were initiated by you or your team? Like your company reaching out and saying, hey, we have an idea, versus like they're coming inbound and you're triaging those opportunities?
So I would say initially it would be from the internal within the company. If you are good at announcing them, like with Aura, we put a lot of press behind it. It was very mutual in terms of how we wanted to go to market. And truthfully, from there, we started getting a lot of inbounds. So I would say it's actually more inbound at this stage. It really all stemmed from those first few that we did. And then the more that we do, so we just recently announced a partnership with Bark, where we are now on Bark phones and within the Bark parental control app for parents trying to, better understand what their kids are doing on their phone. And if there's an alert or something that happens, and they then have Talkspace as a resource. So I don't remember if that was an inbound or how that came to be. But the point is, we just announced that recently. Every time one comes out, a lot of inbounds come in. But you also want to have an internal partner pipeline because you want to keep that steady drumbeat, especially as you start finding the right, I'll say, integrated partners that are more in that performance partnership lens.
You mentioned at this stage a lot is inbound, and I believe you meant that this stage of maturity in your partnership program. I would love to also ask you about company stage and maturity. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening, CEOs or heads of marketing at early stage companies. And I remember as a founder thinking this company could promote us and we would get all of this customer acquisition. How would you guide or advise earlier stage companies on sort of when does it become realistic enough that they should consider allocating precious dollars and time to try to go make it happen?
It's a good question. I personally think that affiliate programs are very underutilized. And because it's not a new, shiny part of marketing, people think of those as something that's in a different bucket. If I was the founder of an early stage company, I would really start there because the nature of an affiliate platform is that it is performance based. But you would be surprised at what you find there. Some of our larger partnerships, larger brand partnerships, are actually partners that we found through our affiliate program, and then we ended up doing more with them later. So I would really start there. If you're not able to, or if you do that and you still want to do more, I would say stick with one or two, test them out, focus on it being reciprocal marketing partnerships so that it's free, right? You don't want to pay. Otherwise you are then thinking, okay, do we spend here or do we spend on performance marketing? And more often than not, performance marketing is going to be much more predictable and more scalable, at least initially. I mean, the other thing is, depending on the type of company, partnership, it might not work, right? Like the model worked with Shutterfly because we were able to have such a robust promotion. In certain types of healthcare companies, that's actually not the case. You can't even do promotion. So what is it that's that hook that makes that partnership work? I also like to talk a lot about distribution partnerships versus a marketing partnership where you're just promoting another brand and they're promoting you. Because if you think about within the process of another company's user journey, where do you fit along their user journey? And that's where you get plugged in, and vice versa, versus just doing the marketing. Like the Hawaiian Airlines one is another good example, right? Like you're on the flight, you're taking all these photos, upload them to Shutterfly and you can have your photo book by the time you get home. So it's really about those journeys, because I've seen a lot of more promotional partnerships, which is great. You do a collab post on Instagram and sort of talk about each other. And it is a good awareness driver, but it's not going to be that long-term growth driver for the most part that you would get by being a part of the more of the distribution ecosystem, if you will.
Man, so many good insights there. When we do these interviews, generally at the midpoint, we will ask some lighthearted questions. Let me give you some quick hitting questions as an A/B test to see which you prefer on a few things, both work related and personal. Okay.
So fun. Okay. Like a lightning round kind of thing?
Yes. Lightning round, just whatever comes to mind. It's cool. Okay. Mac or PC?
Mac. But I have an Android, so this is a conversation for another day. But
I mean, maybe the next question should be iPhone or Android?
Android. It doesn't make any sense though.
Okay. Email or Slack?
Oh my gosh. What's email?
Focus groups or social listening?
Both.
Okay. I'll allow it. I'll allow it on this one. Morning person or night owl?
Neither. I'm sorry. I'm learning I'm not a black and white.
Oh man. Okay. All right. We got to dig into this one before we continue.
I'm very well balanced. I don't want to go too early, but I also don't want to stay up late.
Do you, is the average time that you go to sleep before or after 11 p.m.?
Right around.
And is the average time you wake up earlier or later than 6 a.m.?
Right.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Funny.
Books or podcasts?
Podcast.
Board games or Netflix binge?
Netflix. I'm binging something right now, actually.
Let's come back to that. And lastly, beach or mountains?
Beach.
Okay. All right. So what are you binging?
It's an old show that somehow I discovered on Netflix, and it's called Younger.
Okay.
I think for a lot of women in their 40s, we all face that moment in time where we're like, we're getting up there, right? So this, and the reason this show is so relevant is that she works at a publishing company. So it's very much aligned with like advertising and marketing. And there's actually 7 seasons. I started watching it. I started noticing some things and I was like, when did this start? It's from 2015, which I didn't even know when I started watching it. But ultimately, she's over 40. She had a kid, in her early years. Her daughter went off to college and she's sitting there going, okay, like, I want to go back to work, but she wasn't going to get hired because of her age, like as a junior role in publishing. And like, I've heard this story before, this happened. And so the shenanigans, I mean, the things that she does, basically posing as a 26-year-old, like changing her whole personality, her style, hanging out with the younger crowd. It's just, that's the whole premise of the 7 seasons. It's also very New York centric. So there's a lot of Broadway cameos and other things. And it's just generally hilarious.
Sounds like it has more depth. I recently finished Ragnarok on Netflix, which is a modern interpretation of Norse mythology, which great show, but maybe not quite as thought-provoking as that. That's great.
Every time my husband comes in and I'm watching one of those episodes of Younger, he's just like, this is such a chick show. but then I get him to watch it and he's like, okay, it actually is pretty hilarious. So yeah.
There's a lot of good older shows. I mean, even I'll throw it back even further and then we can continue on the marketing front. But my wife and daughter are watching Gilmore Girls.
Oh, wow.
And they are just like, I mean, they are eating it up, both of them. And I don't know when that was made, quite a bit further back than 2015.
We often go back and we watch episodes of Cheers, and they are hilarious. Yeah. Cheers, Office. Yeah.
That's great. So I do want to come back to influencer marketing. This first question is, what does influencer marketing mean? Specifically at Talkspace, how do you approach finding the right influencers, especially when you're promoting something that's sensitive or personal?
Yeah. So I think we have a pretty clear-cut brief around the types of value props and things that we want people to include when they're talking about Talkspace. I would say other than that, the core of our brand is that authenticity and the fact that there are millions of reasons around why someone might get therapy. And so we really do tell them that we want to hear their true, genuine story. I mean, one of the great things about therapy is that it's not 5 years ago. We're like past a lot of the stigma, and most people will talk about it openly, or they'll talk about something openly that happened with a family member or a friend or whatnot. But most of these stories are very personal stories, and that's what we encourage. Certainly we have like our core target audience tends to be 25 to 45 female, but we also have campaigns. So like when we're focusing on Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, or we just recently launched TRICARE coverage for military and military dependents. So there tends to be, what is that overarching topic like Men's Health Month or military that really drives the recruiting process. As far as how we think about influencers, it's really someone who has, their own audience really of any size that we can amplify to a like audience. And then also that can tell an authentic story. I mean, that's really the core of it. I think a big part of making influencers successful is having different types that can keep your content fresh and also across different sizes. So like we've worked with Michael Phelps since 2018. He's an influencer, a very different type of influencer, and our relationship with him has changed over the years. Then you have like the military spouse who lives in Texas, and her story is as authentic as Michael Phelps, just speaking to and being amplified to a different audience. And you want to have them across the spectrum if you can.
Can you speak more to recruitment? And like Michael Phelps, for example, how did that collaboration come about?
Yeah, so it was a little luck in a way. Of course, it was before I was at Talkspace, and definitely kudos to the founders for like taking that moment in time. But he was working on his film, The Weight of Gold, which was all about his mental health journey. And I believe we were approached on that. And our founders were like, this is a moment in time, right? Like he was very relevant at the time. He was telling this super authentic story. Talkspace was really just coming onto the map. And this was even before COVID. But the reason that we have such strong brand awareness today, 5 years later, is because of Phelps and sort of bringing his story forward. I mean, people remember it because they're like, the first man to do this, the first athlete, very decorated athlete, this type of person who you would never know had, mental health struggles, right? They're on top of the world. And so people really do remember that. There also was a massive amount of media dollars spent in those early days. The VC money, like it was spent, and it's not something that we would do today because we're in a different stage of the company and we have to balance awareness with profitability and all the different marketing channels. But fast forward several years later, we still have a massive halo from what we did with Michael Phelps. And we still bring him in, but in a different degree. If we're doing a Men's Mental Health Awareness Month campaign, as an example, we might have 10 influencers telling their story. And we also might have a prompt for Michael. And like he's sort of becomes part of those everyday stories in that campaign. But it was ultimately the founders just seeing like this is going to be a moment in time. And they were right.
That's awesome. I'm wondering now, sort of the engine that you've built around influencers, is that the same team that's doing strategic partnerships, or are they different?
It is. It's ultimately the brand team, and the brand team partners really closely with the growth team because it's all like on my team, one and the same. And it's really about having that integrated marketing view. What are you trying to do? What are the company goals? And how does everything we do ladder up to that? And having everyone be on the same page about that. But then tactically, the brand team, they're thinking about, okay, we're trying to talk to military spouses as an example. So they're thinking about how do we get the best combination of organic reach, but also the ability to amplify through paid. And so really that's why it's part of that team. Also because I think that just that organic paid connection is really important. It's all part of the brand team.
How's that team measured in terms of performance? Like you mentioned, still getting a halo from Michael Phelps, and goodness, as a performance marketer, on the one hand, that's amazing. On the other hand, it's like, there's no way we can attribute sales today back to, it's very, very hard. To what degree are you trying to attribute real business results back to specific either influencers or that team and the collection of influencer efforts?
It really comes down to just that more with less mentality. Are we getting better results and growing over time across the business because of points in time and just overall integrated initiatives? And if we are, then it's like all the cogs in the wheel are working. And so we're all measured on that. So I think from that perspective, that's where if you're a marketing leader and your team is not integrated, like that is a huge thing that I would push for, because we're not trying to say, okay, brand team, stand over here on your own and show me all of these results without all these other things, and vice versa for the growth team. It really is one team. I would say the key areas that they are measured on is really just awareness. And what's interesting about Talkspace is our awareness continues to go up, even in a world where we are spending less than half of what we used to spend in the early Phelps days. And a lot of that is that trade-off to those strategic partnerships where we are still getting brand awareness. Yes, we had that early foundation, but we're spending less and the awareness is going up. And that is because of the stories that we're telling on social, how we're integrating social with our partnerships, how we're bringing in the influencers across paid and brand performance or whatever cute kind of thing you want to say, connect the two. It's really about that. I'd say the other thing is it's just a constant learning mechanism of whatever it is that you're doing, are you getting better? And it could be anything. Is it mentions? Is it followers? Is it comments? Is it thumb stop rate? Like whatever it is, are you getting better? Because you're just always operating against your baseline. So if you're getting better against that baseline or you're not and you need to adjust, that's a big part of it. So our social leader, who's amazing, who also worked with me at Nurx, I've been bringing some people over from the past life. She does a monthly report and she looks at what did we do relative to last month that is better or worse, and how do we act on that quickly so that we are on that constant stage of just driving more scale and and getting better over time. So that constant learning is really important. And I would say also why we've shifted a lot to partnerships, because the effort and the cost relative to what we're doing on brand, it's pretty small, and it does ultimately get baked into the growth line.
That's awesome. There are a lot of good nuggets there. One that sticks out to me is that human judgment does still matter. It's not just the data. I mean, it's human judgment of saying like, did this get better? Did this get worse? And there's real value there. Also as an asset for performance marketing, right? I mean, we see with client after client that the best creative often is endorsement, user-generated content, influencer. And so to your argument, these are tightly intertwined, certainly in your efforts and a lot of companies' efforts. So those are great.
Yeah. And you know what? You just have to find cheap ways to do things. That's really, of course, again, depending on your size and stage of the company, but where Talkspace is, we're constantly just finding ways to do more with less. And this is where AI for the future is, I think, definitely going to help us. But with these non-Phelps type of influencers, we're going at it very opportunistically, and we're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on each influencer. We get approached all the time from teams, athletes, musicians, pickleball player, like the list goes on and on and on. Not a day goes by that I don't get approached. And we look at some of those opportunities, like how do we, relative to the cost, how will this perform? How does it fit into our overall growth plan? Is this the next Michael Phelps type of opportunity? So we're definitely looking at all of those things. But I would say generally right now, most of them are relatively low cost on the line. And we know that when we bring them into the cost within the growth plan, that they ultimately need to back out. So we make changes based on that.
And when you say back out, you mean integrated with your other costs baked into your CAC as okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So let's pivot for just a few minutes here at the end on organic social media. And we've talked about influencer, but I really mean like brand owned first party social media accounts. I would love to, I guess, start with what is the value in your mind of organic social today?
Yeah. So I think if you think about growing your fan and follower base of people who know and are familiar with your brand, I think of it as another communication vehicle, just like you would Lifecycle, SMS, or any other channel, because there are people out there who, once they connect with your brand, you're putting content out there that they might or might not see, right? Let's face it, like most people won't actually see it. But for the people who do and want to interact, want to amplify, like you definitely need it for that. And I think that's a core place. The other thing is just trust. Like if you're an early stage brand and don't have a social presence in the world of AI bots and distrust and fake brands and all of these things that happen. I mean, it's the first thing that I do if I see something on social and I'm like, oh, is this even real? Like, what does their social presence look like? I look at it. Certainly doesn't mean that it's real, but it is one way, right? Just like a website that you can show that you're a trusted brand. And then the last is just that sort of, again, growth, brand, performance connection. A lot of what is there organically can be amplified, and those channels sort of learn from each other. In fact, I'm totally blanking on the name right now, but there's a really cool company that basically allows you to feed in real time all of your organic content into an ad, even into a TV ad. Or you can go in and say, like, these were top performing organic posts. I want to feed them into this ad that I have on Meta. So that's really where, again, that kind of brand and creative comes together. And
when you think of organic social, I'm curious what platform, are thinking Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit. How do you sort of view the landscape now for organic social?
It depends on the stage of your brand. I mean, if you're a earlier stage, smaller brand, you should probably hone in on a couple that are the most relevant to your target audience. For Talkspace, we've gone pretty broad. And it also, some of it depends on what we're doing in paid. So we started leaning in on X, on paid, and therefore wanted to have that presence organically as well. Again, so they kind of feed off of each other. But yeah, we've chosen to go broad because our product is relevant pretty much to everyone. And our team has a pretty efficient process in just figuring out what do you post where? And some of that is just based on the personality of the particular channel.
That's great. And I think one of the newer variables of sort of where to post and how to look at it that we're seeing with some of our clients is training the LLMs. And so, for example, we've seen a lot more interest in Reddit, for example, because people see so much Reddit content surface through the LLMs. And so as we get to like, okay, how is SEO evolving? I really I really think it's more of an opinion that the value of organic social is actually going to increase quite a bit, especially on some of these properties, because that is like one of the ways to train the models.
Great point, right? It's not just Wikipedia anymore coming into Google.
Right.
Even though that's still a thing. But yeah, I think there's definitely more work to do. Reddit, Quora, thinking about all those UGC platforms and how that's going to be brought together in the LLMs with what's on your own website. I'd say we're kind of early in that process, but definitely on the radar.
Everybody is. Everybody is. Katelyn, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was great. You've shared so much wisdom that I know will be valuable to our listeners. So thank you again for being here.
It's fun to just step back and talk about all this stuff, especially with you, because this is what you do every day for clients too.
Totally. Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Growth Talks. We hope you found our discussion insightful and fun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable content. And if you're excited and ready to start up-leveling your growth strategies and execution, Right Side Up has you covered. Right Side Up is a leading growth marketing agency that is partnered with over 1,000 companies of all stages and sizes to help them meet and exceed their growth goals. With expertise across all growth marketing functions, we can help you evaluate product market fit, develop customer acquisition strategies, navigate executional challenges and staffing gaps, and make pivotal decisions with confidence. And whether you need one individual or a custom-built, full-service team, we'll find you the right A+ talent. Visit us at rightsideup.com to see how we can help you and your company grow.